Welcome to the Conservation Core Training Module number 4, dealing with the topic of active listening. If you're looking at this video, you should have then with you the module worksheet for active listening. And I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it in each video just in case people are just watching this video and not others. The worksheets are an important part of the training, and they're intended to serve as outlines of the training modules. There'll be certain questions and prompts that you'll be asked to respond to in writing. And we realize that writing does not come easily to everyone, and at times it can be difficult. However, the writing presents an opportunity for you to engage in the material in a deeper and more thoughtful way, and also allows you to share your unique perspective or your unique look at things. In no way are the worksheets intended as a test or an exam to see how well you understood the material. There are no right or wrong answers or responses to the questions that you're asked to write about. You're not graded or judged on your responses. Your reactions are intended to extend your thinking and allow you to have a deeper dive into the material. I strongly suggest upon the completion of each module that you share your worksheet with either a supervisor or another colleague or someone so that you can go over your responses and that we possibly can use some of your ideas to improve the training. Okay, well then let's go on and see what goes on here. Oh, the importance of listening. No, we're a Buddhist colony. Buddhist with a B. Little joke to start off. Okay, now this was in module number 3, where we presented the philosophical positions that we all have around change. And we talked about the inner position where change comes about from an internal unfolding, and that's represented by relationships and listening strategies, and these are the relationship listening strategies. We talked about the external position where change comes about by the external environment and rules and rewards and punishments. That's how people learn and change, and these are the techniques or strategies there. And then the middle position. Well, today, and I mentioned to you in that video, that each of these, all of these positions are necessary if you're going to be a professional as opposed to a technician. Well, today we're going to look at active listening, which is a major strategy under the internal philosophical position, where the supervisor's role is to build strong relationships and congruent relationships through all of these strategies, and one of them is active listening. So that's what we're going to look at here. Now, active listening is really one of the most important communication skills that there are. And it's a skill that is not intuitive. It needs to be taught. And by the way, active listening is really strenuous. If you are engaged in active listening, it can be a very tiring experience. It involves the listener observing the speaker's behavior and their body language. Having the ability to interpret a person's body language lets the listener develop a more accurate understanding of the speaker's message. And later on we'll present some facts about speaking and listening, and you'll see how important a person's facial expressions and body language are in terms of our understanding what they're saying. Active listening was a term developed by Carl Rogers and Richard Farson back in the 1950s in a paper, but that's not really important. The active listening is an important way to bring about a change in people. That's important. Despite the popular notion that listening is a passive approach, you're just sitting there listening, clinical and research evidence clearly shows that sensitive listening is a most effective agent for individual personality change and for group development. Listening brings about changes in people's attitudes towards themselves and others, and it also brings about changes in their basic values and personal philosophy. People who have been listened to in this new and special way become more emotionally mature, more open to their experiences, less defensive, more democratic, and less authoritarian. Now, that's a powerful tool. That's a powerful tool. A little aside, a story. I was up in Seattle at a park there, and there was a woman who had a beach chair, one of the low beach chairs, and she was sitting on the grass, and she had a sign, and she said, "I'm willing to listen to your story for 10 minutes." And this woman was just sitting there, and there was a line of people lined up to sit down next to her and tell their story. So listening is really important. Okay, if we look at the images here, hearing is the sense that allows you to perceive sound. So our ears take in sound waves, transmit it down and to the brain in terms of electrical impulses. It is a physical act, and it only requires the reception of sound waves. Listening, on the other hand, is the mental process that requires concentrating on sound, drawing meaning from it, and reacting to it. Active listening is the conscious pursuit of understanding what the other person is saying and feeling and what the message means. So active listening involves hearing, the ability to hear. It also involves the ability to listen, to concentrate on the sound coming in and to draw meaning from it. But you're also then watching the individual, watching their facial expressions, their body language. Here's some interesting facts about hearing and speaking. How much time do people spend listening? What's your guess on that? How much time do people spend listening? Well, let's take a look. It says here, people spend between 70 and 80% of their day engaged in some form of communication. And about 50% of their time is devoted to listening. So about 80% of our day is spent in some kind of communication, some form of communication, speaking, listening, and about 55% is for listening. What's the average speaking rate? How many words per minute do you think on average we speak? Well, some people are chattier than others, but on average, the typical person utters anywhere from 125 to 175 words per minute. How many words do we listen to each minute? Now, we speak between 125 and 175 words. That's how fast, generally how quickly we speak. How many words can we listen to? Your ears work a little faster than your mouth. The average number of words you're able to listen to per minute varies from about 450 to 1,000. That's quite a gap. But that's many more words than we speak. How much of what we hear do we absorb? Even though your ears are capable of picking up on so many words, your brain doesn't necessarily process all of them. Most people only remember about 17 to 25% of the things they listen to. That's a pretty interesting statistic. How important are the words we say? You might be surprised to learn that your words only convey about 7% of what you're trying to say. The other 93% is communicated through facial expressions and the tone of your voice. So this is why active listening is so important, because words are only explaining about 7% of what people are saying. It's through their nonverbal, through their facial expressions, their nonverbal behaviors, their tone of voice, that most 93% of the meaning of what they're trying to get across. And that's why active listening is such an important skill. All right, let's continue on. Active listening is a skill that needs to be practiced and reinforced. I can't say that enough. It's very, very important. Now, here are the characteristics of active listening. And these not should be submitted to memory, but you should be pretty fluent in being able to be involved in active listening. And not every encounter of active listening will have every one of these in here, but these are the essential ones. First, the motivation to understand the speaker and to be aware of what is referred to as topic and personal information, or what's referred to as the arc of distortion. The arc of distortion represents the gap between what a person intended to communicate and what they actually communicated. The greater the gap between what was intended and what was communicated, the greater the potential for misunderstanding. So here, we have this line. This is what the person is intending to say. And this is what is communicated. If there is a big gap between what the person intended to say and what is communicated, then there can be some difficulty or barrier in the communication. A classic example, let's take it from school, elementary school. It's recess time. A student comes running in from recess, slams the door shut, goes to his desk, sits down, stamps his feet, puts his head down. And you go over and say, well, what's the matter? And he says, nothing's the matter. Well, the words that came out of his mouth, the actual topic that he was talking about, the words were, nothing is the matter. If you read that on a transcript, on a piece of paper, you'd say, oh, nothing's the matter. However, all you have to do is just listen to tone of voice, body behavior, body language, and you see that all of that is communicating a totally different idea. So you have this gap. And that's referred to as an arc of distortion. So when you are when you're involved in active listening with someone, look for these arcs of distortion, for the difference between the topic that they're talking about and the personal information, the tone of voice, the nonverbal communication they're giving while they're talking about it. Another critical piece of active listening is empathic paraphrasing. Now, paraphrasing is generally saying in different words what the person said. But we're going to take a look at this empathic paraphrasing. Empathic paraphrasing involves restating the speaker's words, ideas, and or feelings, checking on or demonstrating understanding. It is an important component of active listening. In other words, we're restating what the speakers said, either their words or their ideas or their feelings, as a check to see that we've understood. The listener can paraphrase the speaker's words, ideas, or feelings depending on which is most appropriate and informative at the time. Okay, here's a little scenario. Consider this scenario. Melanie Garcia, a 21-year-old Corps member, has gone on vacation with 3 of her girlfriends to Acapulco, Mexico. You couldn't join them because of financial reasons. However, you are very good friends with Melanie and you call or text her frequently. Here is a transcript of part of your phone conversation with Melanie last night. Melanie is speaking. My father calls me every night and demands a detailed description of what I did and with whom I did it. He treats me like I'm a baby, and I don't know the difference between right and wrong. I've had it up to here with him. Now, when I ask you, I want you to put the video on pause, and I want you to go to page 4 on your worksheet, and there the scenario is printed out. And I want you to develop a written response, an empathic response, an empathic paraphrase that addresses Melanie's words, just the words that she's talking about. The second one is I want you to develop an empathic response that addresses Melanie's ideas. What are the ideas she's expressing? And finally, develop an empathic response that addresses Melanie's feelings. So go ahead and put the video on pause. Go to page 4 in your worksheet. Complete those written responses and then turn the video back on. All right, put it on pause, please. Okay, good. Well, let's take a look. I'm going to develop an empathic response that addresses Melanie's words. Now, this is just an example. This doesn't mean that this is right and yours had to be just like this. So I might say, if I'm going to address just the words that she was talking about, your father calls you every night and asks you for a detailed description of your comings and goings. So that's just sort of a restatement of the words. Now, if I were going to give an empathic response that addresses her ideas, I might say something like this. It appears that your father keeps a pretty close check on you every day. So that's just addressing the idea that Melanie was talking about. And if I were going to do an empathic response that addresses Melanie's feelings, it might look something like this. You seem a bit angry and frustrated with your father's lack of confidence and trust in you. So that addresses her feelings. Anger, a little bit of anger, a little bit of frustration. So those are 3 different ways of paraphrasing. And when you're involved in an active listening conversation and you're going to use empathic paraphrasing, you may want to select which one would be the most appropriate. Do you just respond to the person's words? Will you respond to their ideas? Is that most appropriate? Or is there strong feeling in what's going on? And so you might use an empathic response that responds to their feelings. Other characteristics for active listening: appropriate eye contact and posture, an air of confidence and friendliness, yeah, of course, an air of empathy and respect, appropriate tone of voice, encouraging behaviors like, please tell me more, I see, yeah, go on, go ahead, please go on, go on. These are all lubricants. They're like oil, they lubricate a conversation. Seeking clarification, asking questions. Silence, now that's an interesting one. Silence can be a big part of active listening. Although you have to be careful with silence, because if there is a prolonged silence, it can tend to cause defensiveness. Formative summation. Formative summation is giving a summary. Let's suppose a person is talking about something and then they complete that topic and they're going to move on to another topic. Well, you might give a formative summary, a summary of what they've just completed. And then when they move on to a new topic and you're listening to, and when they complete that, you might give a formative summary of what they were talking about in the second topic. And then a summative summary. That would be a summary that summarizes the complete conversation when the conversation is over. And also validating comments like, oh, yes, I see. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so these are the components of active listening. Now, what we're going to do, you should have a printout of those components in your worksheet. Yes, you do. Okay. So you may want to refer to that printout. So we're going to look at a video. It's brief, taken from the Big Bang Theory TV show. And it has to do with it depicts a dinner conversation between Sheldon, who's the lead character, and his girlfriend. And in the conversation, Sheldon is going on and on about a video game and this and that, and his girlfriend seems disinterested. However, the conversation shifts, and although it uses satire, Sheldon's girlfriend demonstrates several characteristics of good active listening. So go to the top of page 5 of your worksheet, and while you're viewing this video, see if you can list the characteristics of good active listening that Sheldon's girlfriend demonstrates. Okay, let's take a look at the video.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And then furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Who is it? Who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
Okay, so that's the clip. Did you get a chance to sort of put down any of the active listening that she went through? Again, even though it's a satire. Okay, let's continue on here. Listening is not waiting to talk. She's saying to her husband, I've got the test results back from your ear doctor. You're not hearing impaired, you're listening impaired. All right, what I'd like you to do is go to page 5 and 6. Page 5 and 6 on your worksheet. And please complete the exercise on page 5 about active listening, and then the exercise on page 6. And thank you very much for your participation, and hope to see you in the next video.